3, 2, 1. All right. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Meg, and I am here from the Power to Fly virtual hosting team. I am super excited to be digging in on this subject this morning or this afternoon, and really happy to start introducing you to our speaker and get moving with today's discussion. So before we get started, I do just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. If you've joined us for a previous chat, this will be kind of old hat, so my apologies, but I'll try and get through it quickly. Today is all about your participation. You sent in questions prior to today's chat, or if you have questions that you are, that come to mind while Tonia is talking to us today, you are more than welcome to participate by either coming off mute and submitting your questions there, or you can also throw them into the Zoom group chat if you maybe don't have audio capabilities. Just to flag for you, we are going to ask that if you are not actively speaking, you stay on mute. That way you are there might be like kind of background noises and stuff that you don't realize might contribute to, cluttering up the audio for everybody. But I promise you, if I do mute you, it's not a rebuke. You are still more than welcome to participate. Just make sure you only come off mute when you are actively speaking. Like I said, we are being recorded. So if you don't want to show up on our live recording, don't come off mute. If you can have your cameras on, as long as you don't come off mute, you will not show up in the live recording. If you still want to participate but don't want to show up, not a problem. Like I said, just make sure you put your questions in the Zoom group chat. And if you are in like deep Black Ops cover and don't want anyone to know that you're here, you can still submit questions or comments. Just do it in the Zoom group chat, and instead of sending them to everyone, you're going to use that little drop down feature and just send them to me. My name will be on there as Meg Power to Fly. So because we are being recorded, we're also live streaming to our YouTube channel, which is at Power to Fly. If you hear, we'll be sending out an email in 1 to 2 business days, probably Monday or Tuesday, depending on, because of the weekend. But we'll be sending out an email to everyone that registered for this event, whether you stay for the full time, you only stay for 5 minutes, or you're watching this in the future because you missed today's event and you want to rewatch it later. Anybody that registers will get that email with a rewatch link to check out this recording. But if you want, Tonia says something amazingly mind-blowing and you have to talk about it or send it to somebody first. If you don't want to wait for that, not a problem. You can always, like I said, head over to our YouTube channel at Power to Fly, where the recording will be hosted, I think, within 5 minutes of us ending today. So please feel free to go check that out. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which I highly recommend so that you don't miss future chat and learns. But you can also, kind of make sure that you're staying up to date on stuff that we're running without cluttering up your inbox. You're also more than welcome to share on social or follow us on social that you are learning with Power to Fly today. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And you're more than welcome to, kind of share the love and let people know that we've got some great free resources to help you in your career development. So please feel free to send that out if you'd like. I'll be introducing Antonia in a minute, and then we'll dig into some of the Q&A. So as we get started here, let's introduce you to our speaker. So Tonia Russell is a global IT executive director with Bristol Myers Squibb. She's committed to coaching new leaders and helping people to thrive. She studied computer science and engineering, and she was also a varsity tennis player for all 4 years at a Division I school. As a former varsity athlete myself for women's rowing at Indiana, that's pretty awesome. So thanks for shouting that out in your bio. So Tonia is really addicted to, kind of the teamwork, competitive edge, and, consistently moving her professional career forward. She absolutely values a growth mindset, being part of a high-performing team, and leaning into uncomfortable situations like she'll be talking to us about today. She's figured out how to navigate the urge to fit into corporate culture while still being her authentic self. And she's also an avid sports fan with a particular passion for the New York Giants. So welcome, Tonia.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Meg. That's a great introduction. And I'm super excited to be talking with everyone today, even though I think it's a Friday before everybody heads out on vacation. I'm so honored for those that are joining, and I'm super excited about sharing some of my learnings over a very long career and how to keep yourself motivated and how to lift up others in the process.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your schedule. You're right. This is a very empty Friday. Sorry, my dogs are going nuts as my husband gets home. But yeah, thank you so much for jumping on to share your time and your expertise with us. So like I said earlier, Tonia does work for Bristol Myers Squibb, who's hosting, who's sponsoring today's chat and learn session. In a minute, I'm going to share some links with you in the Zoom chat where you can check out Bristol Myers Squibb's Power to Fly company page. So if you are interested in working for Bristol Myers Squibb, or even if you just want some more information, you can follow the link that I'm about to send. And what that'll do is it'll take you to their company page on Power to Fly. There will be a big pink follow button in the upper right-hand corner. I very much recommend that you click that follow button. This company page will give you, like it shows up there, you can check out information about the company. You can look at their upcoming events like today, or if they participate in upcoming virtual career fairs or our summits or office hours or any of those kinds of virtual events. And you can also take a look at their open jobs. So if you take a look there, they are hiring. So if you want to check out what their open positions are, please feel free. If you apply via Power to Fly, it's kind of nice because there's always a Power to Fly team member that's following up on your application process. So it's a really great way to make sure that you don't fall through the cracks of a large hiring system. But if you don't see anything there that really interests you or it fits your skill set, but you're still interested in Bristol Myers Squibb, absolutely make sure you click that follow button, because joining their follow network does a couple really great things for you. It tells Bristol Myers Squibb that you are interested in working with them. And so that's like a really great thing for their hiring team to know. They can take a look at that list when they go to post new roles. But the other thing is it lets you know when they post new roles automatically. So that way you don't have to feel like you have to keep checking back on a jobs board and remembering what was there or what wasn't. And it's a really great way to kind of stay up to date without having to worry that you might be falling behind on something. So absolutely check out that company page. Like I said, I'll throw that link in the chat here in just a minute. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you guys before we get started, because it's being recorded, do not worry about, getting your, taking notes or, asking to repeat something. You can always go back and review the recording. But we do have people that like to, kind of know what questions are coming in advance, right? Some of our more type A joiners appreciate this. So I'm going to stay on this slide and then the next one for a couple more seconds. Please feel free to take a screenshot if you'd like. What we did is we collected all of those questions that y'all submitted prior to today's session. We, kind of took out redundant ones and arranged them in what we feel is kind of a conversational format. But I'll go to the next slide now. So what we've tried to do here is arrange them in conversational format, but all of you that are on the call today right now, you guys all have the opportunity to really direct the conversation. So whether we picked one of your questions to talk about or we didn't, you are more than welcome to come off mute to ask your questions, comment, add context to your questions if you'd like. But it's all, try and make sure that the best way to make sure that your question gets asked and answered is to volunteer it either by audio or by text while we're going through this session. I know we have a lot of great questions and not a lot of time to get through them. It always seems to go very quickly. So if you have a question that you want to make sure gets asked and answered, please feel free to come off mute and do so. You're more than welcome to interrupt me, but try not to interrupt Tonia or any of our other attendees. I know it can be difficult with lag times on Zoom calls and that kind of thing, but just do your best to kind of avoid that. So sorry guys, to get us started here with one of our first questions, Tonia, can you elaborate a bit more on leaning forward versus leaning back? There are multiple parts to this question, but let's address that one first.
Sure. I'd love to answer that one first. So I'll start with leaning back. And this came to my attention, and it's actually physically. If you notice body language at all, I would find myself, if I felt that my voice wasn't important or valuable or being cut off, that I would start to just physically my body would lean back in my chair, and I'd even find myself scooching my chair back. So, and I think the term people say is, you make yourself feel small because you have a physical reaction, perhaps, to feel that you're not fitting in. So I would physically try to catch myself, first of all, from withdrawing physically. So that's leaning back. And then when you do lean back, you're actually then more hesitant to speak up and contribute because you're that much physically farther away from the conversation. So leaning forward, you can think of it simply as keeping your hands and elbows on the table, like you were taught when you were 3 years old, and not to have your hands under the table. And that's physically, by leaning forward, then you're actually showing you're interested, you're participating in the conversation. And being an athlete, like Meg is, and many of those on the phone, you're actually ready to engage. You're in that position where you feel more comfortable and confident to engage in the conversation. So that's one example.
Excellent, thank you for that. So the follow-up questions for this section are asking about what advice you might give your younger self. Like, are there things that you would have let go of sooner, or any opportunities that you really regret not taking?
Yeah, I think the advice I would give to my younger self certainly would be try to take a deep breath and look at things from someone else's perspective instead of looking at it as this is what someone is doing to me or making me feel. Often, I think earlier in my career, I would take things more personally and think that someone's act was intentional in terms of perhaps not taking my opinion or feeling excluded, when actually I think I needed to feel more empowered to say, hey, I'd like to participate in that session. So really assume the best in others and invite yourself in when you don't feel that you've been intentionally been included.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to think about, is that, that attitude of the way you interpret different people's actions can really kind of make or break your mindset, right?
Yes.
I remember hearing a quote, God, it was several years ago, but it kind of really blew my mind. That was about how nobody is anti-you, they're just pro-them. So if you kind of go into these situations realizing that most people aren't really thinking about you because they're too wrapped up in their own stuff, because that's how people are, but kind of putting that lens on it and really, listening to what people are saying and taking that in through the lens of not really animosity necessarily, but like that aspect of them looking out for themselves, not trying to screw you over, can really help people kind of better react to some of these things that happen that could be very easily interpreted as kind of a slight or something like that.
Yeah, it's similar to, you hear the saying when you're buying a new car and you're going to buy a Kia, all of a sudden everybody has a Kia on the road. Well, if you think of yourself as a victim, then you're always looking for those signals and interpreting them that, oh, they're trying to, undermine me. And that's just not the case. People are just trying to prove their own credibility in some cases, or they may just not be aware of what their actions are resulting in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good call out. It's like that confirmation bias, right? If you think that this is what's going to happen, it's pretty likely that you're not going to be disappointed. Yeah. All right. So this next person's question, I found really interesting. This person had written in saying, or wondering, who did you turn to when you had moments of self-doubt? Do you feel that there is a particular milestone wherein the self-doubt kind of curtails naturally?
Yeah, and I think, again, this is a learning. I can think of many times when I had moments of self-doubt and I would candidly be complaining about it, right? Oh, because how I perceived other people made me feel, right? Or a comment someone made. When I needed to turn that around and look at it as an opportunity to grow, and it's okay to make mistakes and to learn and to be open about that. So I like to surround myself with people that are 10 times better than me. And, they help lift me up. And as a team, we do amazing things. So I have self-doubt every day. I had a self-doubt coming on this call. So I think it's really where I turn to is to say, it's okay. It'll work out. And if I need help, there are people that I can reach out to for help.
Yeah, really. That's a really good thing to highlight, right? That if you're not surrounding yourself with people that are better than you or that are, that you can kind of look to for aspiration and inspiration, then maybe you're not really challenging yourself. You're not really growing. That idea that if you apply for a job that you know absolutely you can do because you're already doing it, you're not really stretching. You're not growing. You're not, kind of advancing yourself and your skills and your career.
Yeah, and everyone on this call, is unique, and there are certain unique strengths. I think of it like a starfish. Every starfish is unique. So there are certain strengths that each one of those that are on this call bring to a conversation, bring to a meeting, bring to a relationship. And there are areas where we may not be, that's not our strength, but that's okay. I think it's being able to say to yourself, that's okay.
Yeah, you're right. And it's easy to say and hard to actually do, but, definitely something to keep striving towards. Yeah. All right. So this woman wanted to know, do you have advice for focusing on future potential opportunities rather than previous setbacks? And how can we change our mindset in regards to that?
Yeah, the focus is, well, really reflecting on what did I learn. So when I had an opportunity to leave one position and move to another, I reflected on what could I have done to be more successful in that opportunity. And for me, it was I needed to learn to build trust with some of my key stakeholders. And what can I do to build trust? So then when I looked at a future opportunity, I took that learning, which was a very hard learning, and really focused on it. That was going to be my priority, was to build a lasting trusting relationship. Because in the type of roles that I've been in, it's all been about delivery and execution and get the job done and what's the next thing we need to work on. Relationships took a back seat. However, and I would hear things about networking. Well, you need to network more. And I'm like, who's got time for networking? I can barely, raise my family, can barely network with my own family with. So I think it's really focusing on, okay, what was it that caused the setback? And how can I take that learning to the next opportunity?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to focus on. A great, an opportunity or, an opportunity to, like we said earlier, kind of reframe the situation.
Yeah, and it's really being introspective. And that comes with time. Because I think there's a point in our career where we're trying to prove ourselves, prove our credibility, and compete, rather than looking at, well, how can I be part of lifting up others? And I think as I've moved through my career, that's the pivot I've tried to make. It's just being aware where you are in that spectrum. Are you still trying to prove yourself, or are you trying to grow and help lift up others?
Yeah, you're right. That growth and helping uplift other people is so important. All right, so I just want to call out again and flag that if you do have a question for Tonia, you're more than welcome to come off mute and ask. I'm going to hold for a couple seconds here just to give somebody time if they'd like to come off mute and ask a specific question. Or you are more than welcome to put those things in the chat. I will be monitoring, I'm monitoring that during the whole presentation today. So please feel free to throw any questions or comments or context if this is one of your questions being asked. No, nobody brave wants to come off mute? Okay, I won't force you to, no pressure. Okay, so this person had written in saying, I can't successfully communicate my skills when looking for a job. Do you have any advice on this?
I can't successfully communicate my skills. So the advice is best comes from interviewing advice, which I know Power to Fly is quite a number of sessions on. It's really looking at the job description, which is interesting. make sure that you really understand the job description, and then provide specific examples of how you, not the whole team, but what your role was in terms of meeting the job requirements, and being short and sweet, like a minute. And then if the interviewer is looking for follow-up details, then they will ask. The number one thing, I sit in a lot of debriefs of interviews, and what I'll hear is, well, the person went off for 15 minutes and they went into a tangent and they didn't really answer our question. And I answer the question directly, or even repeat, is this what you're asking me? And then provide a specific example of what your role was. So for example, if I'm applying for a project manager job, I would say, and they ask me, well, tell me about the most complex project that you managed. You can say, well, there was a time when I managed a large ERP implementation that was a $50 million project. It had 50 different stakeholders, and we needed to get it done within 3 days. And it ran a $10 billion business. And I led that successfully. So that would be an example.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more, more common things that I'm hearing, because I sit through a lot of these chats, obviously. And one of the more common things that I keep hearing, especially recently, is, like you said, that idea of highlighting your contribution and that accomplishment instead of the skills that you have. So instead of focusing on like, well, I can do this, 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 and this, if what you're talking about could be bullet pointed, then maybe look more at like the impact that you had. Measurable metrics sounds really repetitive, but like, focus on like the metrics of how you improve something or how you streamline something, or, the effect that you had, as opposed to, really just ticking off a list. I also kind of felt that went with the second part of this question about speaking confidently about your accomplishments. It's really easy, especially, I'm not immune to this either, of feeling like I sound cocky or I'm going overboard when I'm talking about my accomplishments. But are there any tips or tactics you use to try and maybe fight that feeling?
Yes, you know what helped me get over this? Because we're taught not to boast, right? Not to brag, not to market ourselves. Yeah, that's so important. And I think that's one of the differences between men and women. Men are more comfortable. Women we're tentative about boasting. I actually worked with one of my male colleagues, and I asked him, tell me about my accomplishments. What do you think I did well and why? And it was amazing. I'm like, did I really do that? The way that he explained it to me put it in a whole nother light that I hadn't thought about, because I'm always about, okay, what have I done lately? Right. So that would be one. It doesn't have to be a male, but ask a colleague of yours about your accomplishments. Then you're going to feel proud once you hear somebody else say them about you. And that's what worked for me. And then you can start off every sentence and say, I was proud of this. And that gets you in that mindset by leaning forward, not leaning back, right? Say, I was proud about how I led this initiative and the way the team felt and the big celebration and the outcome to the business. And I think that can be done very sincerely without seeming cocky or going too far overboard.
Ruby, do you have a follow-up to this question?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Meg. Thanks, Tonio. When you were explaining about that short answer to the point, highlighting facts, does that also hold true for folks who are building their resume? Because a lot of times I get that advice, but when I try to put together my accomplishments, I do end up adding words, which later when I look at it, I want to take out, but then it's not enough information. So how do I handle that? What is your advice?
So your question is related to building a resume? whether to keep it short.
Yeah, with highlights. That's something that a lot of folks recommend, and I like the idea. I want to build around my accomplishments, but oftentimes I find myself when I try to highlight the top 5 accomplishments, I miss out on a lot of things that I have really done to accomplish all that. So how do I handle that?
Well, what I would suggest is you focus on the what was the accomplishment and what was the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
and how you accomplished it, you can save for the interview. So
Okay.
there's a temptation even when I was writing up my own performance review, right? To say, well, I navigated through these organizational complexities and I talked to this person and we negotiated a common understanding. And those are all hows, but ultimately what matters is what was the outcome and what was the challenge, not how I did it. The how will come across in the interview itself.
Got it. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does. The challenge is, there are so many things one has to do in whatever role they are in. It's not like, if you're a product owner, you just focus on that one piece. There is a lot of other responsibilities that one has to take over. So when you're trying to build your resume and you're trying to, portray your best because that's your face to whoever is going to consider you for the interview opportunity, I want to put in enough information that showcases my expertise and skill sets along with accomplishments, so I end up having more than I should have. And if I try to get rid of a lot of stuff and then I'm looking at it and it's about a 10-liner, which sort of tells me, oh, maybe it's not all that interesting. So, how to maintain a good balance that, there is the interest and I showcase my skill sets along with my accomplishments.
Yes. And I think the other answer to that would be, the purpose of the resume is to get an interview.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to get their attention. So look at the job description and focus really on the most important skills that you think would differentiate yourself from other candidates. Those that are table stakes regarding if the job description is asking for being knowledgeable in biology, you've got that through your education. Well, what was it uniquely that you did? Maybe that would differentiate you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure.
And thanks, Ruby, for that follow-up question, because that's absolutely a very good point. It can be really difficult to feel like you're covering everything. You don't want to leave anything out in case the hiring person or the recruiter, whoever's looking at your resume, thinks like, well, if they left this out, they must not have it. But especially, either when you have a very long list of skills and accomplishments or when you're just starting out, it can feel like it's very hard to make sure that you're covering everything that's necessary without kind of overdoing it or cluttering up your resume to the point that no one's really going to read it.
Yeah.
No.
Thanks.
But yeah, Tonya makes a very good point. Treat it like that teaser. Treat it like, if you put these accomplishments and they really, you don't feel like you have to list so many of the underpinnings, because then maybe somebody will want to know, well, how did you get that done? And then you can, kind of elaborate there, in an in-person interview or, like a face-to-face or via a phone call. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So we have about 30 minutes left in today's chat. So I just want to flag, if anybody else wants to be brave and come off mute and ask their question, please feel free. Or if we are covering one of your questions and you'd like to add a follow-up or add context, please feel free to do that, either by coming off mute or throwing your question into the Zoom chat. So this next person has written in a question that really spoke to me as well. This year has been all about uncertainty, honestly, even more so than any other year we've had. And so could you share some tips for overcoming that fear of the unknown, or, overcoming that feeling that you really maybe don't know what you're doing or aren't sure where you're going?
Yes. So think of an example where I recently, well, actually this past year, I inherited 2 areas that I had never been involved with before. And they're very critical to running the company. And I think the first thing is, and I started off with this, was to focus on relationships and build trust. So to recognize that you aren't in this alone, that typically when there's some area of uncertainty, if it's stepping into a new job, especially as an example, there are people that are there already that are waiting to be listened to. And so reach out to those individuals that have been involved in an area that you're new to, and tell them that you sincerely want to listen and hear from them. How is it going? What have you learned? What could we do differently? And by listening, you're learning, and you're also valuing other people's opinions and lifting them up. So it's a win-win, and it helps build up your confidence that you're becoming more knowledgeable over time. Don't try to be the expert if you're not the expert. Reach out to other people like this forum to get input and advice. And I always like the saying, people won't listen to you until they feel that they're listened to first. So it's really a win-win by doing that. And so that's my advice around starting a new job. I've done a lot of do-it-yourself projects at home this year. And, I look to YouTube, right? And other resources to overcome the unknown. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's a really great, like you said, a great attitude to have with it. Look at it as an opportunity to learn something new, and understand that maybe if what it teaches you is what you don't want to do or where you don't want to be, that's still a very valuable lesson and something you didn't know before then. So yeah, it can very much help when you're faced with that uncertainty that, I don't think just plagues those of us with anxiety. It definitely plagues everybody this year, especially. So thank you for that. Okay, so this person has a really interesting, kind of question that I think you'll be able to speak really well to. She says, I hesitate to speak up when there are self-centered people in a meeting or people that will put you down to make themselves look better. Is there a better way to handle those situations other than just staying quiet?
Yes, again, it's understanding that typically these people are trying to prove themselves. And they have what would be called more of a fixed mindset. They're not really interested in learning from others. They're in a place where they want to prove themselves for whatever reason. And then there's a lot of reasons for that. They might feel afraid. They might feel that they're not being recognized. So the first thing is to continue to lean forward, not physically lean back. And then if people are putting you down in a condescending manner, you can handle it 2 ways depending on the audience. So I was in a meeting, and this is when we were in the office, and my opinion was minimized, right? And we've all been in that situation. And so what I've learned is you can handle it 2 ways. One is I'll look for a second opportunity to bring it up again, right? And not raise my voice, which is very difficult because I think each one of us, if we don't feel like we're being heard, tend to raise the voice. Like, wait, like you're not, like they didn't actually hear you. And the more you raise your voice, the less people are hearing actually what you said. They just hear you raising your voice. And if the second time it's not heard, then I will not say it again in the meeting because it's not effective. And then I'll find a way to contribute outside the meeting. The other is to have allies in the meeting. that you prepare ahead of time. So I have many allies that I've developed over time, and this needs to be an explicit agreement, right? Where if, for example, one of my colleagues is being talked over, I'll act on her behalf to say, that let me just see if I understand what you mean, Meg, and repeat what she said to give her the opportunity to talk again. So this is, again, the theme here is lifting others up. It's being able to help others' voices be heard and recognize when there's a time and a place to actually continue to try to get your point across. The one thing that I would not do is try to shame that person in the meeting. Like say, well, you keep putting me down. I don't think that's appropriate. That's not going to build bridges with that person, nor they may not have done it intentionally. If you're comfortable, you can always talk to that person afterwards to see if you can make them an ally.
I love the idea of having kind of like a meeting buddy, somebody that has your back and you've got theirs. Because I know that even there have been situations where it seems kind of like the lines are drawn by gender, unfortunately. But there have also been times where, I feel there are certain meetings where I felt like I didn't have a voice, and then other meetings where I definitely felt like I had a voice and I could recognize that other people weren't being listened to. So seeing that and recognizing that you are not always the person that's in that, kind of put upon position is really good, because that way when you can help other people, and that engenders that goodwill and that that positive help from others.
Yeah, and there's another approach that works well, and these are some of the more mature teams that will set some ground rules up front, saying we want to hear from everybody, and let's sure that everybody has a voice to include their ideas. And that needs to be very explicit. It doesn't happen by accident. It needs to be a meeting norm. So that's also a practice to put in place. And that's especially important when there was virtual meetings and we would have colleagues in Europe, and most of the people would be in an office, maybe in New Jersey. So it's really important to have meeting norms to lift up hear everybody's ideas.
Yeah, that's a really good practice to put in place. And it can also just be something that, even if it's not established at your place of business or in your meeting style, it's always something that it's a really good thing that you can suggest, because it's not just on your behalf. Like, I feel like I'm not getting listened to. You can position it as, can we make sure that these meetings are more egalitarian? I'm worried that some voices aren't being heard. So can we make sure that, we have a check-in or time held at the end for additional notes if somebody has it, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's being bold a bit, because somebody are like, what? I'm not used to doing that. I like ad hoc meetings. But just like you're doing, Meg, you're checking in with the team, everybody on this call. Does anybody else want to come off mute, right?
Yep, absolutely. That's part of the reason I do it, because I get paid to fill the silence and I'm very good at it. But I want to make sure that, people feel like, our attendees feel like they have the ability to, really direct this conversation and participate. And, you guys are the ones that are important here, not me. I get to do this every day. But if this is the only Power to Fly chat you ever attend, which I hope really it's not, but if it is, you should have the best possible experience. So you should feel like you're getting something of value out of it, not just listening to me prattle on or talk over our speaker or anything like that. So
yeah, I think that, again, it's the mindset. So if I focus on the self-centered person and how angry I am at that person for not letting me talk and talking over me, my energy is going into being zapped by that person, rather than thinking of, well, how can I change the dynamic of this meeting? Which is a more constructive, positive way to look at it. And when somebody asks me, what would you tell your younger self? That's an example where I would tell my younger self, don't focus so much on the people, focus on the dynamics that really can help everybody contribute.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for that. Ruby, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, we're talking about meeting participation and inclusiveness. One comment I had was for a lot of my meetings, which have large audience, we probably most of the times don't have time to cover everyone's thoughts. So I try to do meeting minutes, and sometimes when I have missed out on something, even if there is not a really important follow-up that needs to be done after the meeting, I would just send out my thoughts in an email saying, thank you everyone for joining the call. This is what I was thinking about. I would really like to discuss this sometime later when we all get together.
Mhm.
So not forgetting about it, not feeling bad about it, just throwing it out there, because you just never know who's going to jump on the bandwagon with you. And you get the support then.
Yeah, I like that because there isn't one chance. I think that's the point. There's
Yes.
multiple follow-up opportunities. Don't think of it as if I don't speak up now, I'm never going to have the opportunity. Create those opportunities.
Well, and keep in mind, if you work in a place where you really feel like that, you really feel like if I don't speak up now, I'm never going to have the opportunity. If that's really the case, that's an important thing to know about that organization. And that's something that you can flag and say, hey, I feel like, the person that is able to best articulate their thoughts in the moment is the only one that gets heard. And some of us really do process these things and need kind of a little bit of time to mull them over, but then we come up with really great ideas that really should get a pass, or should not get a pass, I'm sorry, get a fair hearing. So it can be just as easy as that. Whoever leads the meetings, call it out to them. It doesn't have to be in the meeting. It doesn't have to be right after the meeting. You can do it, kind of in a outside way or in an outside time, so that way they don't feel put upon of like, well, we have to make these changes right now, right before the meeting. Come on. It's a good thing that you can raise. And if they listen to it, great. If they don't, it tells you even more about that organization and about how maybe this isn't the great fit for you, or maybe you need to, take a stronger position on something. Like, is this really a change that really would benefit everybody? Okay, so our next question talks about, like we talked about a little bit earlier, kind of getting ignored in a work meeting. So we also had somebody, Rosa had asked, or Anjana, I'm sorry guys, my pronunciations are terrible today. Anjana had asked about finding space for her voice in meetings when they're kind of hijacked by an individual or there's a lot of people there. This person had written in saying, sometimes I will share an idea at a work meeting and get ignored, but then someone else will repeat the same idea and get credit for it. So I know that not in all situations, not all workplaces, it really matters who has the great idea. It's more about like who's able to execute it. But how would you, kind of tackle this problem, especially in a workplace where that credit is very important?
Well, I think you just said something. If credit is really important versus the outcome, then again, I'd wonder why is credit so important? Because that really is not helping teamwork. If people are competing to get credit, so that would cause me to pause and question: Am I doubting myself because I'm not getting the credit, or is credit really important in the organization? So, I mean, it stings, I think, when that happens. If you feel comfortable, you can say, yeah, I think that's exactly what I was trying to say. What you just articulated, perhaps we can work together on it. Something like that.
I think that's good. I think when I read this question, I saw it as more of like a pattern of behavior, where not only is somebody kind of piggybacking off your idea or not really thinking for themselves, but they're making a pattern of it, or making a habit of it, and it doesn't seem to be noticed. So it's not, for me, I agree with you. So if credit is the only thing that's important, that's not really a great culture in that organization. But if it's more the idea of contribution, and your contributions aren't really being noticed because somebody else is really like, either putting the cherry on the sundae that you spent all that time making, or, you know, kind of like stealing your thunder a bit. You know, you're saying something and it's perfectly fine, but they get to reword it, and it all of a sudden everybody's on board with it.
Yeah, and I think I look at it two ways, because I think I know I'm guilty of people probably thinking I've taken their ideas, because you hear something and then it triggers something in your mind, and then you say it. And then without giving that person credit for initiating your idea. So I had a colleague of mine who would do that, and he was extremely effective at articulating ideas and getting buy-in to them. Fantastic. And so I spoke with him about it, and I did speak to him about it on my behalf. I spoke to him about it on my colleague's behalf, which is always easier. And he hadn't realized that he was doing that, because in his mind, he was thinking, okay, I'm building on this person's idea and I'm just trying to support it. From then on out, what he started to do is, hey, I'm trying to build on Meg's, what Meg prompted in me is that we could do X, Y, and Z. What do you think of this? So he actually then made an explicit change in his behavior to reference the person that spurred the idea.
Yeah, that's great. And you're right. Sometimes it is a situation where taking that situation, or taking your feelings to that person and like kind of raising it to their attention, not necessarily making the way you feel their problem, but the way my mom taught me to do it was sort of, she calls it painting someone into the nice corner. And by saying, I'm sure you didn't mean to blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm sure you didn't mean to kind of repackage what I was saying and take credit for it, or pass it off as something that you thought of. But it felt like this is what came across, or my favorite way to do it is, I'm sure you didn't mean blah, 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 blah. Can you explain what you meant by that? Or can you help clarify for this for me?
And that's exactly right, because you're trying to provide them that you relate to what they're doing, giving them the benefit of the doubt. So the key takeaway from today is, don't assume people are trying to be antagonistic or do things intentionally to hurt you. Give them the benefit of the doubt, have the conversation, or try to figure out how you can be more empowered in a situation to lift up others, instead of putting energy into, well, I'm the victim.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we've got about 10 minutes left in today's chat. So please feel free to come off mute and ask questions or add your comments where you'd like to. This next person had wanted to know, often we feel we are a perfect fit for a role, we apply for it, but we never get the opportunity to have that conversation with anyone. For someone wanting to bring their value to Bristol Myers IT, what do you recommend to make your way to a live conversation?
Yes, well, being part of these forums is a great first step. I just talked to one of my colleagues who was in, I think it was the BMS networking session a little while ago that Power to Fly sponsored. And we hired a couple people from Power to Fly through Power to Fly, right? So that was really good. So I certainly think using the networking through Power to Fly, as Meg said, will put you in touch with the right people. I'm from IT, so I certainly will look for whoever is speaking up, their resumes, and happy to be an advocate for this team.
And something I like to flag here is that we usually provide the LinkedIn information for our speakers. So Antonia, if you want to send that out, or even send it to me after today's session, we can include that in the rewatch email link that goes out. So that way people can, connect with you if they have further questions about this kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. So this person had wanted to know, how do you share an opinion with someone who disagrees with you, but might be opening to listening in a peaceful way?
Oh, I've become an expert at this. So first of all, kudos that, how do you share an opinion with someone who disagrees with you? Yeah. So first of all, kudos to you wanting to be able to share an opinion. And I'm glad you have enough of a relationship where they're able to listen in a peaceful way. So that's wonderful as a first step. My first suggestion is to say, is to focus on two things. One is, what really is the person trying to accomplish? So if someone says, we need to get 20 people together tomorrow because we need to get this done by Friday. Well, what they're really concerned about is the fear of meeting a deadline for Friday, right? And so what you try to do is say, okay, first of all, I understand that what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to get this done by Friday. What about us looking at developing, identifying one or two people to come up with a plan that we can all get together and review tomorrow morning? So you first of all acknowledge the outcome that they're trying to accomplish, acknowledge what perhaps they're asking, and then provide your alternative to meet that outcome. Because I think what they're trying to do is really say, I'm really anxious about something. I need to get to the goal line. Here's one idea I have, and then now you can bring forward your other idea.
I love that. I love that idea of, kind of leaning in and saying, okay, well, here's, I know what you want to accomplish. Here's a compromise we can make. Would that work for you? Because then you really put the ball in their court to either follow your compromise or suggest something else that they think, might work.
Yeah, and that's the way you really bring ideas. It's not a compromise. It's really an alternative, an approach. But it is focusing, like you said, Meg, on what's the outcome that you're both trying to accomplish, and acknowledge this is our goal, right? It's not theirs, it's not yours. It's our goal is to get to XYZ by Friday. Here's another alternative. Yep.
Yeah, very true. Ruby, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, Tonya just mentioned she's from IT, so I just typed up. I'm also from IT with more than 15 years of experience, and it's always good to see how the landscape has changed from the traditional work environment to now the cloud operations and services. And I this morning cleared my solutions architect certification. I'm feeling so relieved, and I'm looking so forward to celebrating Christmas and New Year's.
Congratulations, Ruby.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. All right. So our next person's question wants to know, how do I prevent my superiors, mostly men, from cutting me off to underscore or reiterate the point I've just made? So this one I kind of read as slightly different from some of the other questions we talked about, because it addresses how to do this with a superior, which can be really intimidating, even if it's not an issue of really like gender politics at play. So is there a way to do this, especially the cutting you off thing is one of those things that happens to me. It used to happen to me, I should say, not at my current company, but in past jobs, it used to happen a lot. And it's really frustrating, right? And it can be really hard in the moment to try and kind of adjust your attitude towards it, because especially if you're just cut off, like in the middle of what you're saying, right? So what do you recommend to kind of address that specific idea of being cut off by a superior?
Yeah, that's happened to me, certainly quite a bit. It's two things. One is, in the moment when it happens, it's usually because you've taken a breath, and so they've jumped in, right? And then their mind is racing, and they want to get it out, right? So it's not because you're not saying something that's valuable. And I'm sure I do it to my team as well, even though I'm not a man. I find myself having to control that. It's because your mind is racing. So that's probably the motivation. And then outside of the meeting, because this is a pattern with certain people, it's really explaining, talking to them, making them aware. And I've done this and others have done it, saying, you repeatedly cut off. You may not be aware of it, like your mother's comment, Meg, right? You may not be aware of this, but 8 out of 10 times you're cutting people off, and those people tend to be women. And I know that's not your intent, but it's something that I wanted you to be aware of. And then I've seen the behavior shift to, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to cut you off, right? You know, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to cut you off. Well, they become more conscious of it. And then eventually it will wane down. So the other way you can do it is in the meeting, say, hold on, hold on, Bob. I haven't finished my point. I'd like to finish it. And then typically when you say their name, hold on, then they'll give you the courtesy to finish it.
I mean, there's also the phrase of the year, right? Which is just to ever so politely say, I'm speaking. I wasn't finished. I'm still speaking. It's always a good one.
Yes.
Yeah.
It depends what you're comfortable saying. Yep. Whatever.
Yeah.
Or phrase.
Sure. This person had also wanted to know, do you think imposter syndrome affects women in a deeper way than it does to men?
I think this is difficult to generalize. I think there's more, what I notice is there's more self-doubt in my women colleagues to take on a new role because of the fear that we're not qualified or we're not up to it. So without any research data, I would say yes, because I do see that we have seen men, advancing more rapidly, and we think to ourselves, well, I'm as qualified as that person. Yet then kicking ourselves saying, why didn't I nominate for that role then? So I would say in general, that's been my observation. I think we hold ourselves back to some degree.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And it's important to kind of flag it that, like, you're right. It's very hard to generalize on questions like this or ideas like this. But one of the main reasons that happens, or that especially if you do think it's true that imposter syndrome affects women in a deeper way, is it's not based on physiology. It's not based in anatomy. It's not based in biology. It's based in like how we are socially conditioned to react, right? So if what you're thinking is that you have that deep-seated imposter syndrome because you're worried about backing up your accomplishments or whatever, look at the setting and the situations that you're in. Are you constantly being questioned by people around you in a way to like get them, because they need an explanation about what you want accomplished, or are you getting questioned because they they're not very positive and uplifting people? Somebody that might, like we talked about earlier, be maybe a little bit toxic, but more like, trying to make themselves look better and not really cognizant of the results of that, or not really caring about the results of that. So, thinking about it in that light of like, well, it's not that imposter syndrome has to affect you more deeper. Geez, I'm so sorry, guys. I can't English today. It's not that it has to affect you more deeply. It's that, you might have been socially conditioned to believe this. So like Tonya said, change that mindset and realize that you don't have to be this person. You don't have to be in that role just because it's what you've been for a while, or it's how you feel people are casting you. All right, so we are at time today. I'm so sorry, guys. This always goes way too quickly. We didn't get to everyone's questions, but I do hope that we got, kind of some really interesting information out of Tonya. If you have further questions, please feel free to, kind of reach out. Like I said, we're going to grab Tonya's LinkedIn URL from her, and we'll include that in the rewatch email that goes out in 1 to 2 days. So that way you can feel free to connect with her there. As we close out today, I know we're at time, so if you have a hard stop, I'm real sorry. But Tonya, can you just leave us with one question? It's one of my favorite to ask. What is your favorite part about working at Bristol Myers Squibb?
Oh my gosh, the culture there. I was part of Celgene, and BMS acquired Celgene last year. And the biggest surprise for me, because BMS is a big company, is how transparent and the communication is so open, and the culture is so inclusive. So everybody's voice matters. And this idea of lifting everybody up really comes from my time at BMS. So that's the number one thing.
That's so great. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who tuned in today, all of our attendees, people that put in questions before today's session, as well as those that came off mute to ask questions and put questions in the chat. We very much appreciate it. Tonya, I just want to say a big thank you to you. You've brought some really amazing insights to this chat. I'm so happy that we spent this time. And I just want to say thank you for taking time to share with our Power to Fly community.
My pleasure. Thank you, and best of luck to everyone.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Have a good Friday, everybody. Enjoy the weekend, and hopefully we'll see you on many more chats in the future. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.